So welcome to this lesson where we're going to continue on developing the profile page. So continuing on, we're going to take a look at styling up the profile main first of all. And that's very simple because don't forget the left and right divs are going to be floating to the left so they can stack up one next to the other. So obviously if the child elements are going to be floating to the left, the parent, which is profile main, needs to float to the left as well. So it wraps around the child elements correctly. And that's really all we're going to bother with the profile main. But however, then what we need to do is take a look at styling up the left and right div. And there are some generic stylings between the two. So for example, they're both going to be 50% width and so forth and so on. So I'm going to say profile main, and then we're going to target the divs that are a direct child of the element with that ID, and then we're going to start to style them up. So first of all, we're going to tell this to display as a table cell. So both of those divs are going to stack up one next to the other when you say display as a table cell. That's automatically done by default, so you don't need to actually set the float to the left. And also don't forget they'll keep the same height as well, which is very important. Then also we have the vertical alignment. Now typically the vertical alignment is set to the middle, but again you can't be 100% sure. And we also don't want this to line up vertically in the middle. We did for the actual content at the top right here, but let's say that we have, this text and so forth, and we only had 2 comments. Well, that's going to align it up vertically in the center, which may look a bit off. So we really don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is set the vertical alignment to the top. That way all the content will go to the top of the div, which is emulating a table cell. Then also what we have is the width. So both of them are going to be set to 50%. And then I can just save that now and go into the browser and hit refresh. So now we have 50% here and also 50% on this side as well. So the next thing I need to do is take a look at styling up the left div and all of its child elements. So we have left right here, and I'm going to set the padding to 30 pixels. That way it's going to budget away from all of the edges. Then let's take a look at our header 2 right here and get that styled up. So we're going to target the div with the ID of left, and then we're going to target the header 2. And then what I want to do first of all is get rid of the default styling. So we have the margin and the padding. Then we have the line height. I'm going to set that to 100%, so it's exactly the same as the height of the text, which is very important. Then also what I want to do is set the font size to 18 pixels and the font weight to normal, because typically it's bold, so I'm just going to make it normal. And then when we do that, you'll notice we have this text right here. Now the next thing I want to do is take a look at styling up all of these paragraphs. So again, I'm going to target the element with the ID of left. Then we're going to look inside of there for all of the paragraph elements. And again, what we want to do is get rid of the margins, and with the padding, we're going to set the top padding to 15 pixels and the rest of it to 0. That way it's just going to keep on pushing all of these paragraphs down and separating them out nice and neatly. Then we're going to set the line height to 20 pixels. Again, you can find that out through Photoshop. And then also what we have is the font size, which is going to be 14 pixels. And so you can save that now, just hit refresh, and there is our paragraph styled up exactly how we want them to be styled up. Now what we have to do is take a look at the right div, and don't forget that most of the content for the right div has been styled up because we're using the UI, but there are going to need to be a few styles. So I'm going to say right, and the background color is going to have to be set to brown, and then we can go ahead and save that and hit refresh. And there you go, you'll notice that this div has the same height as this div, which is very good. And so now what we can do is start to put in the content, but don't forget that the content is again already been styled up for us, though we will have to make a few adjustments. So as you know, the head.php file is already linking to the CSS that's needed for our UI right here, and we're interested in a mix between the menu 1 and menu 2, and we want to sort of combine the markup to come up with a very simple menu or navigation effectively of comments. So what I'm going to do first of all is put in the markup that's required for this. So we're going to create an unordered list with the class UI_nav_list. And then inside of there, we're going to have a list item. Inside of each list item, we're going to have an anchor that's going to be a dummy link, but again, the backend team is going to have to provide the link's contents. Then also what we have is the actual content. So first of all, we have the image, which is linking to the small profile picture, and again, it's in the same directory. So we have small_profile.jpg, so we just need to put that in there. Then also we have the person's name, again, that's going to be for the backend team, and then we're just going to end it like so. And then finally what we're going to do is have a paragraph element that inside of there is going to have all of the text that we've defined right here. So just copy that out and then just go ahead and paste this in just like so. Save it, and then what we can do is flick over to the browser and hit refresh. Now you'll notice that we only have one right here, so what I want to do is copy this out, and we want to repeat that 3 more times. And then we can just refresh, and there we go, we now have 4 comments. But obviously we're not getting the full amount of text right here visible, and also there is a little bit of a styling problem where they're not going to 100%. We've also got the shadow here, which is something that we don't want. So again, what we need to do is modify some of the styles. And so what we're going to do is we're going to open up this nav_list.scss file that controls the styling for this component, and then we're also going to point the terminal towards it so it creates a new CSS file every time there's a new version of this file saved. So I've got the SCSS file open, and I've opened up a new terminal as well and got this to convert to CSS when we save a new version. So first of all, what we're going to do is get rid of this box shadow. We definitely don't want that. And also we don't want the max width. The width to 100% is absolutely fine. And so we can just go ahead and save that now, and you'll notice the box shadow is gone and everything's going to 100% of the parent's width. So what we want to do is now take a look at the limitations, because at the moment the actual height of the list items is also limited as well. So we want to make sure that we get rid of the height on the individual list items. So that's absolutely fine, and if I hit refresh, you'll notice that now the height has gone, so the restriction has gone from that, but also we have a height restriction on our paragraph element as well. So we need to get rid of that. So what we need to do is take a look all through this code, and you'll be able to see the height is restricted to 67 pixels and the overflow is set to hidden, which I'm going to get rid of. Let's save that now and hit refresh. So when we do that, you'll notice now that we are able to fit everything on. Also, we need to add a little bit of extra padding on the left edge and also the bottom as well. So let's take a look at that padding right there. So with the padding, we've got 20 pixels on the top right, and also we want that for the left and bottom. So what we can do is just delete all of that out and set 20 pixels for all of the padded edges. And so once we do that, you'll notice now it's just budging that down a little bit. So you can see here what we're trying to do. We're trying to make things a little bit more mobile responsive, and that's what we're doing here. But ultimately what we're going to have to think about is the anchor as well, because you'll notice when I make this a little bit larger that we don't really have the correct highlighting going off here. And again, if you find this anomaly and it's not wrapping around the child elements correctly, it's due to the float not being set. So what we're going to do is target this selector. So it's targeting the main unordered list, and it's targeting each individual list item and saying target all the anchors that are a direct child of each individual list item. So I'm going to say float to the left, and when I do that now, you'll notice that anomaly has gone. So that's very easy and very simple to do. And you can see here that this is scaling down really, really nicely. Now, the only other thing we need to do is think about the main layout, because obviously we can't have these guys stacking up one next to the other and then go down on, a mobile screen or something like that. That's something that's not going to work well. So what I'm going to do is budge Sublime Text up next to the browser, and then we can start to style stuff up a little bit quicker. So now that I've gone ahead and set that up, what I want to do is flick back over to the profile.scss file. And first of all, we want to create a media query. So I'm going to say @mediaScreen, and then I'm going to set the max width to 720 and 68 pixels. And once I've done that, the first thing I want to do is get rid of all this padding right here, because now we're extremely limited in the real estate space. So as you know, it's the header_txt DOM element that has the padding on there. So I'm going to target that ID, and then what I'm going to do is I first of all want to set the padding to 0 for the top and the bottom still, but 30 pixels to the left and to the right, and I just save that and just hit refresh. So now we have a little bit more room for our text right here, but what we want to do now is sort of bring the text in a little bit. So we have to change the line height. So the line height is being applied to all of the child elements. So what I'm going to do is just put in the asterisk, which will point to all child elements. And we can set the line height to, let's say, something like 30 pixels. So that's going to make it a little bit smaller. Let's take a look at that. That's looking pretty good. And now you'll notice we can have more lines of text right here. But what we're going to do is just leave it like that for now. Now, the only other thing I want to do is make sure these two divs aren't stacked up one next to the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this selector right here, profile main, and then it's targeting the divs that are a direct child of the element with that ID. So once I've done that, I can just copy that and paste it down below. And what we can do now is say display as a block level element, float to the left, and we want to set the width to 100%. Now, there's also something very important to note right here, and that is the fact that what we have is we've set the padding on the left div. Now, when we set the width to 100%, it's going to go to 100% of the browser's width now, but then also it's going to add the padding on top of it. So then we're obviously going to get a scroll bar at the bottom, unless we put in those CSS properties, which is box sizing. And so with box sizing, what it will do is it will include the padding when we set the width. So now 100% does actually mean 100% including the padding. So let's refresh. And so there we go. But you'll notice now that we have these anchors. Now these anchors have actually got their height set to 100%, which was fine when we were actually setting the height of the list item. But however, now it's not actually needed. So let's take a look at that nav_list.scss file, and we want to take a look at the anchors. So you'll notice here we have the height set to 100%. Let's strip this out and then just go ahead and save, and now you'll notice that everything is still working fine. Even if we went larger, you'll still see that it's working absolutely fine, so we don't really have to worry about that. And so the only other thing that I want to do is, obviously when we get to a certain resolution, what happens is we have this incorrect text, and it looks like what we need to do is actually increase a little bit of that media query right there for the header, but we'll take a look at that in just a second. But right now what I want to do is I want to put this onto its own sort of space or line, or however you want to call it, and just turn this picture into a giant circle and then have this information below. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the profile.scss file, and I'm going to say at media screen, and we're going to set the max width to 600 pixels. Now at this point, if it goes below 600 pixels, what we want to do first of all is make sure that these two divs right here are not displayed as table cells. So what I'm going to do is target the ID profile header, and then I want to target all of the divs that are nested inside of there. Again, I could be more specific, but in our case we don't have to. And then what I can do is say display as a block level element. So if we save this now, you'll notice that they won't stack up one next to the other, which is perfect. So now what I want to do is target the first div that wraps around the image and treat it as if it's a mask to the image. So what I'm going to do is copy this selector and say, okay, look inside the element with that ID, then look at all the div child elements, but I only want to look at the first div child. And so when I do that, I'm only targeting that div, and then we can start to apply some styles. So first of all, I want to set the overflow to hidden. I'm going to set the width and the height to 200 pixels. Then also we have the margin, which is going to be 30 pixels for the top, then it's going to be auto for the right, then it's going to be 0 for the bottom because we don't need any on the bottom, but then we're going to set the left to auto as well. So the auto left and right margin will center up this div, and then the only other thing that we need to do is use our mixin. So I'm going to say at include, and we're going to set the border radius, and that is going to be at 50%, so we get a perfect circle. So if I save that now and we just hit refresh, you'll notice that's what we get. Now let's take a look at the actual text right here, which is the header txt, and we're going to set the padding to 30 pixels all the way around. So if I hit refresh, now we get the padding on all edges. And then the only other thing that we need to do is basically increase the media query from 590 to 600 pixels for the actual header so we don't get this scenario happening. So even just adjusting it by 10 pixels makes all the difference. So thank you for watching this lesson, and join me in the next lesson where we'll take a look at developing the notifications page.